When you were growing up, didn't it often feel like there were certain magical things that were always the domain of the older kids and just out of your reach? Maybe it was their 10-speed bicycles, or their freedom to wander farther afield, or going to the shops without an adult. I must have been meditating on this in my sleep the other night, because the whole premise of the following story popped into my dream fully formed. I hope you enjoy tonight's unusual tale of skipping. So they called it skipping. I don't know where it started, but it was big in my hometown. Kids were doing it everywhere, or trying to. We moved a lot because my dad was in the army, and everywhere we went, kids knew about skipping. If you were in middle school or high school around 1970, you knew about it. It was one of those things that always felt like it belonged to kids slightly older than us. Big brothers and sisters, older cousins, kids you knew from the neighborhood who were a few grades ahead of you, people like that. It seemed like they could all do it. Kids younger than you could never do it. Kids your own age would say they could, but you never believed them. But college kids or proper adults, I never met a single one who could, or even knew what we were talking about. The way I'd explain it is like this. You had to be running really fast, like as fast as you could go. And then the best way to trigger it was to jump, like you were trying to take the gold for long jump at the Olympics. Really go for it. But you had to completely shut off your mind then. And we found the best way to do it was to focus on something in the distance. If you were outside, maybe it was a tree on a hill a mile away. Or if you were in a basement, maybe it was just a ladder against the wall on the other side of the room. It didn't matter. It just had to be pretty much straight in front of you. And you'd tell yourself that you weren't going to land. You were gonna just keep flying until you went into that distant object. And that's the thing, you would. You'd feel like your brain, your consciousness, kept going. And you'd even see everything passing you by as you just, floated to whatever your eyes were focused on until you reached it. Sometimes time would slow way, way down, and those were the best skips. I couldn't tell you that it felt like floating for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or an hour. It didn't feel like how time normally feels. You were just aware that it was a long time, a whole lot longer than it should take to hit the ground, let alone reach that thing you were focusing on. But eventually, you would hit the ground, and you'd feel yourself fall, and that was the moment when your feet landed at the end of your jump. And to everyone else, it would look like you just ran and jumped. But when someone came out of their jump looking all spacey, or maybe even a little scared, you knew that you taught them how to skip, and it had worked. They'd seen it. They knew now it wasn't just a dumb joke like Bloody Mary, and it changed them. I want to be clear that we were kids doing this. We weren't on drugs or drinking or anything like that. The older kids probably were, sure. But the first time I skipped, I was 11. I'd never smoked pot, or had even a sip of beer, or peeked at a Playboy. I was innocent. But I was at an evening event up at the school, and a girl I liked told me she could teach me how to do it. So she took me into the upstairs girls' restroom, which was a trip all on its own, a mirror image of the boys' restroom, but in peach and yellow instead of the disgusting olive green we had, and she told me to just fling myself at the wall at the end of all the stall doors, and I did it, and I skipped, and it was magical. It's one of those moments like when you learn to whistle or ride your bike or tread water. You finally join the club of kids in the know, the ones who can do it. But this was on a whole other level, because it was magic, too. And everywhere you went, everyone you talked to, there was this sense that we'd discovered this, that nobody much older than us had ever known about it or done it before, well, except maybe the Indians or something, and nobody really knew where it had come from, just that it came from us, and that was really cool. I was initiated. Now I could tell when people who said they'd skipped were actually full of it. I would pull people aside and try to teach them for real. Most of them I was able to eventually. Some could never get it. I guess it's like how some people just can't whistle. Sometimes they'd lie and say they'd done it, and normally I felt no need to embarrass them. I just let it go. But when they had done it for real, there was no mistaking it. The wonder in their eyes, the bafflement, the need to talk about it afterward, to ask, "What is this?" It was so electric, it was like a movement. Those last few years that I was young enough to still play outside, especially during the summer breaks, they became filled with skipping, the way they were filled with bicycles and swimming pools. My friends could do it, and so could the girls we liked. It was something to bond over. We'd pick a garage with a big empty space during the day because someone's dad was at work, or failing that, we'd go to a remote spot in a park. I always wanted to try it at the school field, but there were always too many people around. It was like a game, but as we got older, started dating, driving, smoking pot, we still skipped all the time, but it became more philosophical. What was this? How come only we knew about it? And what did it mean? We had all kinds of theories. It was the age of Aquarius finally dawning. It was the beginning of the end of the world, and we were going to usher it in through kindness and understanding. One guy would always say Atlantis was going to rise up, all this dumb shit, and we felt so passionate about it, especially when we were high. But it was just one of those things. There were no answers. Parents and teachers heard about it, of course. Sometimes they even caught kids doing it. But there was really nothing to see. It was just kids jumping, running and jumping. Good old-fashioned all-American exercise, right? So what were they going to do? Tell us to go inside and watch TV instead? No, of course not. There were a few times they overheard us talking, and they assumed we meant cutting class. It didn't matter. Then, when I was 17, a girl from my school, Jolene Stasny, disappeared. She'd been at a party with a bunch of us one night. Yes, people were drinking and smoking, but it was just all people from the neighborhood. I'd lived in the neighborhood about 6 years by then. Most of the kids had lived there all their lives. Everyone was cool. Nobody was dangerous. Jolene had been there with everyone. Nobody saw her leave. Nobody took her away. She'd been skipping with a bunch of others out back. Jolene was one of the best. Most of us, even ones like me who'd been doing it a long time and could do it reliably, there was still an element of concentration. You had to make an effort to do it, but it came naturally to Jolene. She probably could have talked and done it, or eaten a sandwich and done it. There'd been a big group of kids out back by a fire pit, and everybody was skipping, focused on this big oak tree at the edge of the property, and Jolene jumped and laughed and didn't come back down. They all saw it. She was just gone, as surely as if she jumped into a hole in the air. Her image gone. Her voice cut off like a door was slammed shut. Maybe a second or so of echo off the trees and the house. Nobody called the cops because what could they say? And that was probably a mistake, because her folks called the next day, which led to everyone at the party being questioned, and the house being searched, and some kids' stashes of pot being found and them going to court over it. The parents had been out of town. It was a mess. But in the end, nothing tied back to Jolene. They couldn't find anyone who'd want to hurt her because nobody did want to hurt her. They couldn't find a witness to her walking away or getting in a car or going off with someone because we all knew none of that happened. They investigated for a long time. That case was open for decades. But what were we supposed to say? People didn't stop skipping after that. I think it was too ingrained by then, like TV and rock music and everything else that made up the world. But we were growing up. And it wasn't that people magically lost the ability when they graduated. They didn't. But once they went off to college or started working a normal job for a while, it got harder to do. And eventually, you'd lose it. Maybe you couldn't run as fast, or you'd gotten a little heavy, or your back hurt, or you just couldn't afford to fall and hurt yourself because you didn't have insurance. Brian Pedrazo disappeared in 1978, age 19. And Bucky Anderson in 79, age 20. By then, some of the kids younger than us were still skipping, but the bulk of us who'd been the core of that skipping generation, we were growing out of it. I remember the last time I skipped. It was 1980, and I was 20 years old. I didn't go to college. I'd been working at gas stations, but I could draw. And I'd gotten a real job doing drafting work in a real office, a professional job. It ended up being my career. And the last weekend before I started that job, my friends and I got together, drank ourselves sick up at our old high school, and I finally skipped all the way across the football field, from the stands on one side to the stands on the other, and then never again. Laurie Swanson disappeared in 1981, age 21, and she was the last that any of us knew about. I was supposed to retire at 65, but I don't know anybody who does that anymore. Can't afford it. But I've been smart with my money. I can scale back now to something much easier, part-time. I tell myself that it'll be like the difference between regular school and summer school. Just a few hours a day, a few days a week, and then I can go to the swimming pool as much as I want. And I think that's mostly true. True enough, anyway. They found Jolene Stasny's remains on my last day ever as a full-time worker. That old party house was demolished a while back, and now they're clearing the woods. Some new residential care place is going up. And they found her inside of a tree. Her bones, and bits of her pretty hair. She'd been wearing some polyester number, and it was almost like new, sheltered inside the tree. Their working theory is that she was murdered by someone that night who hid her body in a hollow trunk. But those of us who were there, we know better. We just hope she was already dead when she found herself inside that tree. The idea that she was in there, trying to scream, trying to pound, get our attention, it's too awful to think about. The town is growing a lot. New neighborhoods are going up in what used to be farmland, and old neighborhoods are coming down so they can put in new hospitals and fulfillment centers. And I've got a funny feeling that as more of our old haunts get dug up, they're going to find Brian and Bucky and Laurie in some strange places too, like inside of walls, or maybe a foot or two beneath the side of a hill. I don't know why it happened like that. Maybe a few of us were just too good at skipping for our own good. It was a magical time for sure, the age of skipping. But when I think about those 4, and know there had to be lots more like them around the country, maybe around the world, I think it's probably best that it died out. I'm sure somebody, somewhere, had to keep teaching younger siblings or cousins or neighbors how to skip, right? But the movement is gone, that's for sure. I'm not really on social media anymore, but my kids and grandkids are. And when they talk about these trends and challenges that they see online, my ears perk up. I often think that one of these days I'm going to hear them talk about running, jumping, and flying in your mind. I just hope when I do that I hear their laughter, their skepticism, or even their questions. Not a worried phone call from a parent or, God forbid, a bunch of stories on the news. As I said at the outset, this came to me in a dream. And as sometimes happens, I couldn't shake the feeling after I woke up that skipping was very real, that my older cousins had all done it, and that they teased me for my inability to do it. I was even quite sure that my mom had done it as a teen and had tried to show me how. Hey, c'est la vie, folks, the mind is a mysterious place. But anyhow, until next time, don't forget me. N'est-ce pas?